Up next in the broadcast, a Korean trade official who was kidnapped last weekend in Libya has been freed and the culprits captured in a case that still remains a mystery. More dead ducks raise concerns that the country's outbreak of avian influenza is indeed spreading beyond the first farms confirmed to be infected. And top officials from the nation's financial regulators appear before lawmakers to outline their plans to increase consumer protection in the wake of the worst personal data leak in the country's history. Primetime News begins now.
Good evening and welcome to Primetime News. It's Thursday, January 23rd here in Korea. Live from Seoul, I am Yoo Ji-hye.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thank you so much for joining us. We begin this evening with the aftermath of Korea's worst ever personal data breach.
The heads of the nation's financial regulators outlined their plans for handling the crisis to quell rising public concerns that stolen information may have fallen into the wrong hands. Our Ji Myung-kil has our top story.
With the country still in shock after the personal information of some 20 million clients was stolen from local banks and credit card firms in Korea, the heads of the country's financial watchdogs appeared before a parliamentary policy committee on this Thursday to present their plans for addressing the data breach. Choi Soo-hyun, the governor of the Financial Supervisory Service, said more than 2 million cardholders have canceled their credit cards or applied for new ones since Monday. He also said some 25 million people, equivalent to 28% of the country's economically active population, have logged on to the websites of the three card firms, KB국민, NH-농협, and Lotte, to check whether their personal information had been breached.
The three card firms are currently running a joint 24-hour hotline in conjunction with the Financial Supervisory Service. For now, there haven't been any additional secondary damages.
Shin Jae-yoon, the chairman of the Financial Services Commission, said the regulator will strengthen monitoring of staff at financial firms who deal with data protection and their contractors, enhance regulations on the sharing of customer information between affiliates, and consider whether top executives at financial firms should face suspension or dismissal.
We are coming up with measures to levy fines of up to 1% of the revenue of financial institutions if they use customer data to sell their financial products.
In addition, a task force headed by the FSC vice chairman is planning to demand each financial institution submit customer data protection plans by the end of January. The task force will announce its own customer protection plan next month, and the FSC said it will submit revisions to various consumer financial protection acts to the National Assembly later in the month. Ji Myung-kil, Arirang News.
And turning to the bird flu crisis here in Korea, officials have confirmed that the dead ducks found in a river in central Korea have been infected by the latest strain of avian influenza.
This latest case confirms that the virus seems to be spreading. Connie Lee reports.
These dead ducks are the latest victims of the avian influenza outbreak. Officials have confirmed that the dead ducks found in Kumgang River in central Korea were infected with the highly pathogenic H5N8 strain of the bird flu. This is the first case in which avian influenza has spread to other regions in the country. The dead ducks were found about 50 kilometers north of Gyeonggi County, or the area where the bird flu outbreak first started. Officials say a group of about 70,000 wild ducks migrated to the river in Gyeonggi County to look for food. The latest development is now prompting local officials to step up their quarantine measures.
To make sure the virus does not spread, our county is going all out on disinfection procedures.
More ducks are now expected to be slaughtered in the area. In the meantime, Korea's Financial Supervisory Service, along with the Credit Finance Association, have asked different financial firms to help the farmers who have been affected by the outbreak. Assistance such as loans and emergency funds are being prepared for the farmers. So far, the bird flu has been confirmed at a total of 8 farms, all in southern Korea. Some 300,000 ducks and chickens have been culled since the bird flu outbreak first started late last week. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye returned home Thursday from a 9-day trip that took her to India and Switzerland.
Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju has some of the highlights of the Korean leader's overseas visit.
President Park's 9-day trip to India and Switzerland was focused on making it easier for Korean firms to enter overseas markets, calling for more investment in Korea, and seeking cooperation in the creative economy sector. Korea and India decided to upgrade their Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, or CEPA, in the near future by raising the trade liberalization level, which is under the current pact at 75%, 15% lower than the CEPA between India and Japan. President Park and Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh also agreed to revise the tax treaty between the two nations to prevent double taxation.
양국 간의 투자 확대 및 영업 환경 개선에 중요한 토대를 마련한 것을 의미 있게 생각합니다.
President Park was also able to secure promises from the Indian government to resolve the obstacles that have been blocking progress in POSCO's stalled project to build a steel mill in the Indian state of Odisha for roughly 9 years now. In Switzerland, President Park and her Swiss counterpart Didier Burkhalter vowed to work together to realize a creative economy through technological cooperation and by fostering specialized personnel.
스위스는 세계적인 기초과학 강국이고 또 한국은 IT와 응용 기술이 발달한 나라라서 양국의 협력이 서로에게 큰 도움이 될 거라고 생각합니다.
She also attended this year's World Economic Forum in Davos and called on the world's business leaders to look for investment opportunities in Korea's creative economy. During an opening speech at the first session of the global event, President Park emphasized that the creative economy will lay a path to overcoming 3 major challenges facing the world: low growth, high unemployment, and income disparities.
Through startups, as well as the innovation of existing businesses, a creative economy can generate new engines of growth and can grow jobs. There will also be less income inequality, since anyone with a great idea can live out one's dreams by starting a business.
Addressing concerns about the cost of reunification, an issue that keeps foreign investors from pouring money into South Korea, President Park said reunification would be a jackpot not only for the two Koreas but also for neighboring countries. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News.
And speaking of coming home, a Korean trade official who was kidnapped by Libyan gunmen earlier this week was rescued unharmed on Thursday.
And this thanks to Libyan forces that arrested the kidnappers. Our foreign affairs correspondent Hwang Sung-hee has this report.
3 days after he was kidnapped, Korean trade official Han Seo-gu was safely rescued with the help of the Libyan government. Korea's foreign ministry said Thursday that Han, the head of the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency's unit in Libya, is in good health and has been handed over to the Korean embassy in Tripoli.
Han was safely freed by the Libyan government at around midnight Thursday, Korea time. Han was safely freed by the Libyan government at around midnight Thursday, Korea time, and the Korean embassy received him at around 4 a.m. No health problems had been detected.
The rescue operation was led by Libyan security forces, and they have arrested 4 kidnappers who are reportedly part of a small militia. The identity and motive of the kidnappers remain a mystery. And while there were reports that they asked for as much as $2 million, the foreign ministry says no ransom money was handed over.
Throughout the process of Han's rescue operation, the Korean government followed this principle of not paying ransom to kidnappers.
After being interviewed by the embassy about his abduction, Han is expected to travel to the Mediterranean island of Malta, where he will meet up with his family before later returning to Korea. Whether Han returns to his post in Libya is undecided for now, but Kotra says the decision is solely up to him. Libya has struggled with violence and unrest in recent years following the ouster and death of dictator Muammar Gaddafi, and there are nearly 2,000 such armed militias operating across the country, with foreigners often targeted for abductions. As this was the first time a Korean was kidnapped in Libya, Seoul's foreign ministry says it will thoroughly review the case to prevent similar incidents from happening again in the future. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea's top security officials came together on Thursday to discuss North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's recent inspections of strategic military units.
A weekly security meeting held at the presidential office of Cheongwade was attended by Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin and Intelligence Chief Nam Jae-jun. On the same day, North Korean state media reported that the young dictator had observed a training exercise of Unit 323, known to be a special Air Force unit, although the report did not mention when he made the trip. Kim visited the same unit following the nation's third nuclear test last February. North Korea has been churning out articles and editorials calling for efforts to improve inter-Korean relations, and last week offered to end all slanderous comments if joint South Korea-U.S. military drills are called off.
But with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un seen inspecting its military unit just a few days afterwards, how true is the regime's recent peace offensive? Dr. Kim Dong-yeol, professor at the Korea National Diplomatic Academy, joins us now for the analysis. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Professor, what do you read into North Korea's unusual moves?
I am not sure how sincere they are, as they said in the proposal, to end this mud signaling in the Korean Peninsula. Even dubious about the true intention, the sincerity on this point. But I'm pretty sure that they are pretty sincere to negotiate with South Korean government to stop slandering their first family, the royal family, the family of supreme reverence. It's easily, expected that after the execution of Chang Sang-tak, the way that they're executing is very brutal or kind of, unimaginable in the eyes of the Westerners or other countries.
Well, North Korea pledged to take practical behavior first to demonstrate that it's serious about what it calls its crucial proposal. What does practical behavior mean?
I have no such intelligence at all inside of this government or internationally. So I can't say definitively what's going to happen or what's going to be the type of behavior that they propose. My best guess, though, is that probably they're going to propose something to denuclearize or pacify the NLL area, the West Coast area. So probably they says that, they try to withdraw some of those, Navy powers in that area, where they just promise to give the signal to South Korean Navy whenever they make a military move or naval move in that area.
Well, there's a pattern where North Korea carries out military provocations against South Korea after waging peace offensives. How likely will we see another provocation?
I would say least likely. Because, again, this time is immediately after the execution of Chang Sang-tak. I believe the entire world is giving a very watchful eyes to this government. Very brutal, again, unreliable or irresponsible regime. If they are provoking, again, militarily to South Korea or to, outside world, I believe that is the worst case scenario for North Korea. And then even that's going to be, I would say, the end of the regime itself. Because at this moment, the United States is saying something to do if North Korea provokes South Korea. So China is promising a similar thing to North Korean regime if you are provoking militarily, and then China will not go without doing anything at all at this time.
South Korean officials and U.S. officials don't believe in this recent peace offensive, yet the Korean president continues to push for this vision of unification. If not meeting this charm offensive, this peace offensive, then what is the next step?
I'm very cautious to say in one way or another. But if anything, I'd like to buy the South Korean response to North Korea at this moment. Now, the reason that I'm buying more of the South Korean response as appropriate or proper, because South Korea provided a very good chance to resume these talks a month ago, last year, by giving those kind of proposal to resume those reunion things of the separate family in the Korean Peninsula. And then it was, in my opinion, a very easy one for North Korea to take. But North Korea rejected this proposal. And then this actually shows some of the clear sign that still North Korea is not reliable in any suggestion or proposal. That's why I said that at this moment I would buy more South Korea than North Korea.
All right, Professor Kim, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Before your day ends and another begins, get the latest news live from Seoul.
Residents whose features restrictions is on the rise.
Closing ceremony.
Expert analysis from Asia's heartbeat.
The legislature, circumstances.
With a viewpoint only Korea's global network can provide.
The United States, the latest report. Less than
unrivaled access from a team always on standby.
Meeting came on the news. We're trying to cover up the South.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe continues to rile his neighbors in Northeast Asia, defending once again his visit late last year to a controversial war shrine. He also compared Japan's current relationship with China to that of Britain and Germany before World War I. Yulian reports on how both Beijing and Seoul were quick to respond.
Shinzo Abe, a day after he likened his nation's relationship with China to that of Germany and Britain before World War I. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Qin Gang said Thursday that the Japanese leader's memory of history is wrong, adding that Japan should face up to what it did to China before World War I and in the early 20th century before making any comparisons. He went on to say that Japan needs to come to terms with its militaristic history of invasion and colonizations. Only then, Shin said, would Tokyo improve its relations with neighboring Asian countries. Both Seoul and Beijing also had something to say about Abe once again, defending his visit to the controversial Yasukuni War Shrine, which honors several Class A war criminals. The Chinese spokesperson called those Class A war criminals the Nazis of Asia. Seoul's foreign ministry spokesperson Cho Tae-young took a somewhat softer stance. He said that paying respects at the Yasukuni Shrine is evidence that Japan has not repented for its imperialist past and that the continued visits to the shrine are simply incomprehensible. Cho added that his is the voice of not just Koreans but the media, intellectuals, and sensible people in Northeast Asia and the world. Tensions have long been high between the three Asian countries due to territorial and historical disputes, but took a turn for the worse when Abe visited the war shrine in December. Yulian, Arirang News.
Officials believe the Korean economy appears to be moving into a phase of stable recovery. And according to the central bank, the private sector is waking up from years of slumber. Arirang's Hwang Ji-ae has the details.
There are signs that domestic demand is picking up steam and growth in the coming months is expected to be more balanced between exports and domestic activities. The Bank of Korea said Thursday that the economy grew 0.9% in the fourth quarter of last year from the previous quarter. That's down slightly from a 1.1% gain in the July to September period, but it was largely because of a major cutback in fiscal spending prompted by lower than expected tax revenues toward the end of the year.
National tax revenue dropped last year by 1.1 trillion won, or roughly $1 billion from 2012. And that resulted in a drop in government spending. This was the major factor behind the slower growth in the fourth quarter.
The central bank added that the fourth quarter growth was spurred by rising domestic demand. It also confirmed that the economy grew 2.8% for all of 2013 from the previous year, as earlier projected. That compares with 2% growth in 2012 and represented a reversal of a two-year slowdown. Concerns remain, however, about the nation's household debt and employment.
The snowballing household debt problem, the rise in the number of jobs concentrated on those in their 50s, and low-quality jobs will put a strain on a further boost in domestic demand.
The central bank said that the Korean economy will likely continue its recovery and forecast a growth of 3.8% for 2014 and 4% for 2015. Hwang Ji-ae, Arirang News.
The long wait is over for Korean athletes wanting a crack at Olympic gold. With just over 2 weeks to go before the Winter Games in Sochi, the Korean team has finalized its roster. Arirang News' Song Ji-sun reports.
Their moment has arrived. Wearing the Team Korea uniform with the national flag patched on is the ultimate goal and ultimate honor for any Korean athlete. And during the upcoming Winter Olympics, the highest number of Korean athletes ever will get to wear them. With a handful of returning champions, like figure skating legend Kim Yeon-na, and new medal hopefuls, Team Korea is aiming for a top 10 finish for the third consecutive Winter Games.
We are sending the biggest squad ever of 64 athletes, up 40% from the Vancouver Olympic Games. Korea's strength used to be confined to skating, but now we are sending athletes in almost all sports to the Winter Games. That makes the outlook for Sochi and Pyeongchang even brighter.
These young athletes are shooting for the finals in Sochi and a place on the podium in Pyeongchang.
I'm thrilled about my first Olympics, and I hope Sochi is a stepping stone for me to stand on the podium in Pyeongchang 2018.
Technically, we're not short of the world's top snowboarders. It's just a matter of linking each trick smoothly on the half pipe at the Games.
Korea is taking more athletes to Sochi than it has to any other Winter Olympic Games. Will Team Korea also bring home the most medals? The squad will fly to Russia next Saturday after spending Lunar New Year's at home. 송지선, Arirang News.
Figure skater Kim Yeon-na is undoubtedly the brightest star in South Korea's Olympic delegation.
And an Italian sports outlet seems to agree. Stephen Shea joins us to explain. Hello there.
Hey guys, Sky Sports Italy heaped praise on the 23-year-old figure skating queen who's favored to win another Olympic gold, saying that she's more than just a skater, she's a rock star. Kim has helped figure skating see a resurgence in popularity in recent years after stepping into the scene in 2006. Since then, she's won 2 golds at the Worlds and the 2010 Vancouver Olympics figure skating gold. Fellow nationals and figure skating fans across the globe are anticipating her final Olympics appearance, a fitting swan song to her career. And moving on to the Premier League, Sunderland rolled past Manchester United to reach the League Cup finals, where they'll face Manchester City for the trophy. It was a dramatic penalty shootout win where 2 shots past the keeper, including one by Ki Sung-young, were enough to advance. Now let's move on to the Thursday night matchup starting in the KBL. Mobis defeats KGC 65-61, but now it's time for the game of the night. It's the LG Sakers hosting the KCC Aegis in Changwon. Now KCC's porous D gives LG the 16-point edge at the half. They mount a comeback as the role players step up with reinforcements, but it's not enough. Davon Jefferson puts up a 28-11 double-double, and LG gets the W 75-72. Now let's head to the V-League. It's Korean Air going heads up against LIG in Incheon. Now the first set falls to Korean Air, and the home team also takes the second set as well. LIG struggles to hold off the barrage. Michael Sanchez leads all scorers with 28 points, and Korean Air wins in straight sets and takes home 3 points. That does it for me here in the Sports Center. This has been Stephen Che. Check back at midnight for the latest in the world of sports.
China's toxic fine dust has cleared out and warm winter weather has moved in.
For more, let's turn things over to our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, what's the latest?
Good evening, Sean and Ji-hye. Well, today was a mild winter day here in Korea, and temperatures rose to 8 degrees Celsius in some parts of the southern regions. A dry weather warning is in effect in the southeastern coastal regions of Gyeongsang-do province, as well as the cities of Daegu, Busan, and Ulsan. The humidity levels in those regions are less than 30%, so please beware of starting any fires. Taking a look at at the current conditions, the central regions are at the edge of a high-pressure system from the South Sea, which is why we're seeing light clouds hover in those regions. Now, for those of you making plans for the weekend, keep in mind that nationwide showers are forecast for Saturday. Other than that, there looks to be moderate temps until the Lunar New Year holiday, which is at the end of next week. Taking a look at tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at 0 degrees with a high of 8, while cities down south hit the low teens. Moving on to other regions, Jeju makes it to 15 degrees, while Dokdo and Kumgang top out at 10 and -1 degrees respectively. Well, that's all I have for you this hour, but I'll be back with more updates after midnight.
And that's our broadcast on this Thursday night. I'm Ji Myung-kil in Seoul.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.